One of the interesting things about center of gravity is when we sit down to discuss or when we are drawing out certain strategy for a brand and we have to pull in stimulus to make a point. The range of areas that we draw from is really vast, right? Let it be movies, let it be some sitcoms you have watched, let it be some series in Netflix or anywhere, let it be some books that you have read, music, pop culture. We are drawing from all of that and bringing into a work, including your passion. Now, my passion is essentially I love the outdoors. I would at least like to call myself as a serious amateur mountaineer or a serious amateur rock climber. Off late, I've taken to cycling and triathlon, but I love the outdoors. And as part of that, I had done a Bombay to Bangkok cycling expedition in 2017, and this video is me sharing my experience about it. A couple of things. One is that there's a first time. There are a lot of well-wishers of mine, a lot of friends of mine I can see here. Old familiar faces. Thanks for being here. Just want to tell that the first time I'm talking about this. I have never spoken about this in a very formal situation like this. Informally, I have chatted with friends. I have kind of told some anecdotes, but it's the first time. And the thanks also is because it gave me an opportunity to go back 4 years. And when you see the photographs, and it has a very special tendency to kind of pull at your strings, right? Pull at your heartstrings, and a lot of memories come up. Beyond memories, I think it also brought up some of the broken promises that we had actually made on the way to ourselves, to people, right? I'll just share that. Let me just share my screen with you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's very clear.
Okay. I think just one thing which I also want to set it right is saying that even though I have done this cycling, I'm not a cyclist at all. By no stretch of imagination is cycling my passion. The way I would like to take some 5 to 7 minutes to set up the context of how this started and what happened before I get into the journey part of it. The reason I say I'm not a cyclist is at heart, I'm like what Aparna said, I'm a mountaineer and a rock climber, right? The outdoors has been my first love. Till 2015, I was climbing really well. And at around 2015 ke aspas, I think I was hitting a wall. The grades had become far more difficult for me to climb, and the amount of training that I need to put to the payoff of, climbing that better grade never happened, because it takes about 5 to 6 hours to train to climb that kind of grade. So every day I used to go to the rock. I used to come back depressed saying that, boss, I'm not even doing anything. So I quit climbing. I said I will not get into climbing for the next 1 to 2 years, so that I can go back with a renewed vigor. And this was a state of limbo, where I was not doing anything. I was not training. I was just sitting at home, wallowing in my inability to do anything. So that is when Prashant, he also is a climber. He was my climbing partner. He had taken up cycling 1 year back, and he was enjoying it. And he came and told me, "Hey, why don't you take up cycling?" And that was a jolt out of the blue, because in my mind, I've never thought of cycling. And to be very honest, cycling for me was for the urban folks who have never tried the mountains or done any kind of rock climbing. I know it sounds very boastful, but that was my first impression about cycling. Therefore, it was a climb down for me to even accept कि बस चलो यार हम लोग mountain छोड़ के cycling शुरू करते हैं. And even my friends used to jab at me, "Abhi Vijay बदल गया साला, he is running and doing cycling," right? So that is what the initial thought of cycling was. But just to introduce Prashant and Anchal, they run this Audacious project. And for them, this project, the Audacious project is all about getting people to do what they love. And, they may think it's impossible, or they would have thought, okay, let me do it one day. It is a way for them to tell people that it's possible, and they partner with people, right? And this is how Audacious project was done. The first project was Anchal walking to Goa. And then Prashant came with this thought of, चल यार कन्याकुमारी टू कश्मीर साइकिलिंग करते हैं. इधर हम लोग 20, मैं तो साइकिलिंग किया ही नहीं है, वो किया है 50 किलोमीटर. वो बोल रहा है कि कन्याकुमारी टू कश्मीर साइकिलिंग करेंगे. And that interested me. I said that looks like something you can train for, and there is a goal for there at that point of time. Then as we started seeing it, we realized that it's a very popular route. Many people have done it, and they have done it in X number of days, and so on and so forth. And then we started searching. And as we started searching, the whole world opened up to us, because it was a start where people from India had actually driven all the way to London, right? It was through the road. All women's team had done London, and some bikers have gone and done London. We said, why not do the other way around? Let's go to Bombay all the way to Bangkok, maybe end at Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, start from one port and end at the other port, and so on and so forth. That was very, very exciting. So we thought about it and we said, okay, let us do it. And this was somewhere in 2015, September is when we thought of all of this. And we agreed that we will do. And then we went back to our own lives, right? Both of us were working, and we went back. It was all in the ether, but we were starting to train. At least that was the first time I got into a cycle. Prashant took me for a ride. I rode for almost 30 kilometers. And Sida Dharti mein aa gaya. I think it just brought me back to earth, because at 30 kilometers, by the time I came back home, my heart rate went awry. My legs were like jelly. And I think it took me 3 days to recover. And then from the superiority complex of, what is cycling, to the fear that I will not be able to do, forget Bombay to Bangkok. I don't think I'll be able to do even 100 kilometers at one shot. And I'm thinking 100 kilometers, not even 100, I have to do 150 kilometers in 45 days was too much. And that fear set in from one end to the other end, right? So that is where I was at that point of time. So that is how Bombay to Bangkok happened. 60 days, 6,000 kilometers, 7 states, 3 countries. State was Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, West Bengal, Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, then enter Burma and Thailand. That was the thought, right? And but somewhere again in 2016 March is actually when we came back, because all of this in ether and we were on and off cycling, and we came back and we said, should we do it? And we both nodded our heads in apprehension, saying, okay, let's at least try it, because we have gone out and told the entire world that I'm not Bombay to Bangkok kar rahe hain. Not that we were trying really hard, but yeah, we were telling the world, but we are not trained for it. And we took 3 or 4 calls. The first call we said was that let us take the road bike, and people had advised us saying, boss, take a hybrid, take a mountain bike, because the roads are bad. You will not be able to last in a road bike. But we wanted to take a road bike because of 2 reasons. One, every day we needed to do about 140 to 150 kilometers. That was one. Second, what we realized is that when you enter Burma or Thailand, right, there you will have the licensing officers with you. So there are government officials who are actually riding with you all the way and take you from one border and put you to the other border. So those dates had to be fixed. And we had to organize for those stay out there. So those dates were fixed. And we had only 2 months. And in these 2 months, if you have to do such a long distance, we felt that if you take a mountain bike or a hybrid, we must just be able to do 3/4 of the distance every day. So we end up doing 100 kilometers. The second thing we decided was that we will take a support vehicle. Of course, purists sitting here, my friends will kind of thumb their nose against carrying a support vehicle and all that, because the romance of carrying your own stuff on your bike and going out there was very different. But we realized that Prashant is a filmmaker, is a really good filmmaker, and he wanted to film the entire chronicle. And the kind of equipment and all of these things that you would carry, we would have to have a support bike. So we took a support vehicle. Third, we said that we are only 2 guys, we will not take a third guy, which meant that if one of us fell ill or all of those things happened, then it was in jeopardy. So that was the third thing that we said we will do. Now in this, there was one more glitch. What happened is that we realized that Burma had a very strange rule that if you cross into Burma by road and you go into Burma, you have to come back by the same checkpost, which means that if you cross from India to Burma, we can't get into Thailand. We have to come back to India. So what we decided was that we will go till the border, then take a flight from Manipur to Calcutta, then Calcutta to China, because there is no direct flight to Burma, then China to Burma. And then from Mandalay all the way back to the border was another 550 kilometers. So we had to take a car back 550 kilometers and then start the ride from there, which meant an addition of 4 days. And obviously the expenses also increased quite a bit because the extra baggage that we carry and so on and so forth. So in that context, we also dropped extra wheel set, we dropped extra cycles, everything. So we had only 1 cycle, and we hope to God that nothing happened, right? And this is my Strava upload. I mean, I hope you guys can see it. On the left-hand side, this is how much I was training in February, which was 250 kilometers in a month. which went around 75 kilometers a week, right? And that 75 kilometers had to morph into at least 1000 to 1100 kilometers a week if I had to do that ride, because every week we had to at least end up doing 600 to 700,000 kilometers, and we had to train for it. And again, this was something new for me, because typically, since you have been going on treks and climbs for almost a decade and a half now, you are always in the training mode. So you're always training in and out when you're at home or whatever it is. But was training out for 1 hour or 2 hours a day, or maybe a weekend trek, and therefore, if you had to plan for a trek or expedition, you could just jump off and do some training and get going, right? But this was absolutely new. And so right from June, not June, probably July, August, September, we started training heavily. By November, our training schedule was highly punishing. So we used to get up in the morning at 4, start our cycling by 4:30, finish by 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, then go to work, come back home, sleep it off, and again reset the next day 4:30, right? Because we had to ride 4 days a week. And we have never done this. And so in a saddle for 6 hours continuously for almost 4 to 5 days a week took the toll. Our back was gone, our legs were gone, and this was somewhere in October, November, where our shoulders were gone, and we were getting a lot of injuries. And that is when we met our friend Nikhil, who is on the right-hand side. He is a very good friend of ours. He was at that time a physio in the Olympic Gold Coast. So he was actually training the Olympic athletes, or at least helping them rehabilitate and recuperate, through physiotherapy. So he got in a lot of his help. He helped us quite a lot in terms of how to take care of injuries. And this was the first time he actually he said a very important thing to both of us. He said that don't treat yourself as cyclists or mountaineers. Treat yourself as athletes and train like them and think like them. And that in my mind was a very big shift. I said, till that time you were thinking, okay, cycle karna hai, but he said, if you have to be an athlete, what are the kind of things you need to do? So the first thing he said is, boss, tumhara diet kya hai? So we told that our diet is typical, 3 roti, bhaji, whatever, and it totaled up to 1,500 calories. And he said, if this is the case, you will not even last for 10 days. No ways that you will last for 10 days. And he introduced us to a sports nutritionist, Mihira, who is on a chudidar on the left-hand side, giving a very nice smile. She looked at us and she said, you need to at least have 4,500 calories starting from November. And we fell off from our chairs, right? Because both of us were highly weight conscious. And I think was 4,500 means you're going to be like one roly-poly guy sitting on a bike and going there. And that is a thought that we had. But she said that if you don't do this, you will not be able to go. And we couldn't even fight them because they know what we are talking. So we kind of said yes, and we started doing. And that's Sakshi, one more physio, very, very talented physio during one of our training rides, right? And before the journey began in January, I had my make or break moment, right? In December onwards, I couldn't train. I couldn't train because my workload had become quite a bit, and I had to kind of double up because I was taking 2 months off. So I couldn't train at that point of time. And I came back in January. And after I came back in January, I went on a ride with Prashant. And for the first time, I was getting dropped every kilometer. So Prashant will drop me. He will go ahead. When I'm saying drop, I used to lag behind quite a bit. He will go ahead, wait for me to catch up, and then he will go ahead, wait for me to catch up. That was one thing. The second thing, what really psyched me was that for almost 6 hours, my heart rate was around 155 beats per minute for 6 hours. And that itself was a very, very, that itself was a very shocking thing for me, because typically when you even do very hard rides where you're riding at 30 to 35 kilometers per hour, even for 2 hours, heartbeat never goes beyond 140. And at 155 beats per minute for 6 hours, and if this was going to be the case for almost 45 days, it was really worrisome. And I had a lot of doubts. I said, I may not be able to make it. I may not be able to carry on with it. And I almost was thinking of giving it up. that was the time when I met my friend Shiju, and he gave a very sane advice. He said, "Boss, you have trained quite a bit. You have aligned your family, you're aligned your work. Everything is aligned. Why don't you give it a shot? If it doesn't happen, it's fine. You can come back, but at least give it a shot." And that is when we decided. That is when I actually decided that let me go. The other thing that we decided at that point of time is that I will never, or not I, we will never get down from the cycle, right? If there are bad roads, if there are any kind of things that come in the way, we will just carry our cycles, but we will never ever get down from the cycle. So that was the other agreement that we made. Sorry, I didn't share that earlier. And on February 19th, we left Bombay. That's us well-wishers dropping us off at Gateway of India. That's right, me and Prashant again posing. And this is one of the many poses that we did as we went through the project, Audacious project, because we had to post a lot of videos. And when I went, and for me, I started, it was not excitement, but there was a lot of mixed feelings for me when I was doing this ride, right? First of all, my fear that I won't be able to do it. Second, I don't know whether I'll let down Prashant because somewhere if I'm not able to keep up with him. Third, my family has been a very, very strong backbone for me. I think my wife was extremely busy. She's a journalist, but my mom was terminally ill. So there were two nurses. My mother-in-law was also staying with us. She was also not well. So my wife was actually holding fort with her work for almost 2 months. But even before that, because since I was training, so for 5 months, 2 months before the Bombay to Bangkok, 3 months when I was training the whole day, she held fort. And that was a mixed feeling. And the biggest feeling was for me to move away from my daughter, 6.5 years old. I never ever left her. And she also knew that I'm going for a long time. So she was holding on to me, laughing, doing a lot of things. And it was very difficult for me to just leave her and go like that, right? I think so. Those are all the, and of course, my mother. I didn't know that. I was worried that I may be called back from the project, from the ride, because she may pass away. And that was the other thing that was running in my mind. But with all that, and Prashant also was very wound up because it is a second audacious project for him and it had to go well. And he was also having his own demons to fight. So when we left with a lot of apprehensions, lot of mixed feelings. And of course, this is getting out of Bombay. As usual, we had to walk the highway for quite a while before we were able to mount on our cycle. So this is, we moved. So the ride started and it was very beautiful. And our daily, just to kind of say, how was the daily routine for us, right? We used to get up at around 6 o'clock in the morning and start the ride at 6:30. To 6:30 to 8 o'clock, we'll find a dhaba, strike up a conversation with the dhaba guys. And it was cold in the morning, of course. And then from probably 8 or 8:30 going up till about 9:30, 10, we would shoot, right? Because there was a sponsor, Enerzal was a sponsor, and we had to give about some photographs and few movies to them. So there was a lot of shooting that used to take place on a regular basis for about 1.5 or 2 hours. And then you will do some ride for some time. Then you'll pick up a dhaba to, stay to have a lunch and then sleep it over. Also, we realized as we went into dhabas that it was very oily stuff. And so Anchal will get into the kitchen and actually direct how much oil to put and all those things. And that became almost like a regular habit for us. That is Srijan, a very, very fantastic director of photography, cinematographer. He shot the whole film for us. Here is preparing ourselves to shoot. And when you shoot, I mean, you get obviously very beautiful photographs. Wherever you see the Audacious project, it has been shot by Anchal. The other one has been taken from my mobile phone to whatever extent. So, yeah, that is again the highway, and Anchal will make us go up and down that slope at least 20 times before she gets the perfect shot, right? Against the traffic, with the traffic and all that. This is a drone shot, and we had a drone probably, but unfortunately on the 12th or the 15th day, it just fell down. And after that, there was no drone, but we got some very beautiful drone shots, and as also a film, there is a film, I'll share with you in the end. Some of the nice photographs that Anchal took, and you'll find a dhaba and we'll sleep out the afternoon, right? Till evening, we'll start at around 4 and we'll again cycle for 1.5 hours. Interestingly, across every dhaba, without fail, all the 45 days when we stopped at the dhaba, you will find 6-7 people coming and staring at your cycle. They couldn't believe that this cycle can go across any kind of terrain, that this small thin wheels, which are 23 wheels, could actually take a lot of beating. And when they lift the cycle, it was probably the cycle's weight was around 7.5 kgs. And we actually lost a lot of weight on the cycle. We changed the stock wheels, changed pedals, lost 2 kgs of the cycle. And they couldn't believe that the cycle can go at around 40 kilometers per hour and it can go on for 150, 200 kilometers, right? So there are a lot of questions on क्यों करते हैं, and very existential questions they'll ask us कि अब भाई साहब क्यों करते हो ये और काय के लिए करते हो ये, and they can so you will find all this folks coming and asking you, and then towards evening we will start our ride again, right? So typically in a day, in the beginning we did about 100 to 110 kilometers in about 5 to 6 hours, and then after 10 days it ramped up to almost 140 150 kilometers every day, and again around 6 to 7 hours overall. What also happened is that in 10 days, after the 10th day of the ride, we realized that it was summer, we were getting into summer, and the days were becoming very hot. So we started getting up in the morning at 4:30 and started riding. And the temperature fluctuation was starting right from 8 degrees going up till around 36, 37 degrees in the afternoon. So that was the temperature that you were riding right from the morning till evening. And we used to sit down, we sit out the temperatures in the afternoon, but the moment you hit out, it was around 36, 37, 38 degrees, right? So that was one. And even though we used to stop at around 5:30, by the time we settled down, it will be 8:30, because we would have actually gone ahead of a village, right? We had to ride that extra 30 kilometers out of the village. We will come back to the village, search for a hotel, negotiate and put it down. So by the time we stopped at 5:30, we used to probably start winding down only by 8:39. And none of these hotel guys had food, and they'll order it from some place. And we didn't even want to know where they were ordering it from. Man. I mean, very small places, you don't know where it was, where they were getting the food, but he just ate it. And by the time we used to go to sleep, it was 11. So on an average, we used to sleep around 6 hours. But by the time of 15th or the 20th day, our sleeping had come down to almost 4.5 to 5 hours, because the shoots were increasing, because we wanted sunrise, we wanted sunset, and the day was very hot. So you'll sit out some of the hot days. So by the time we slept, it was 11, and we used to get up at 4 or 11:30, and we used to get up at 4:30. So that was one part of it, right? But interestingly, sorry, I'm not able to go on here. And we used to ride, and most of the time we used to ride in the night. And every day we had to meet that amount of kilometers, because if you don't meet that kilometers, it builds up. And because there is a final date to Burma, couple of times we actually rode for 200, 210 kilometers, because we had to make up for those lost miles, right? Now, when I started, apart from the apprehension that I had about the road, there was a lot of romance in my mind. Shit, yeah, it's almost 100 kilometers. You just ride, wind on your face. You think about Motorcycle Diaries and Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. You think about all those and you romanticize the entire ride, right? But nothing prepared me for the silence and the loneliness that you face as you're riding this. Because let's say if I'm climbing or if I'm in the mountains, right? If you're climbing, you have to be in the moment. You cannot be thinking of anything else. If I'm actually in the mountains and trekking, you're very busy. First of all, you're seeing nature, you're talking to people, but you're ascending, you're huffing and puffing, you're going, setting up the camp. So you're very busy and you don't have time for anything. But here, it is just 140, 100 kilometers of stretch. Even if I'm riding with Prashant, he's either in the back or I'm in the front. We may be drafting. But it is not like we are doing this all the time. Sometimes Prashant may be shooting while I would have gone, or sometimes I would be having chai and Prashant would have gone. Even if I'm riding, it is one behind the other. We don't talk to each other so much, right? Of course, I'll share some of the moments that they were talking and all that. But it was always alone. It was always in silence. One of the moments that we would sit and chat, but otherwise it was typically in silence. We may end up calling people just to have a chat. We never listen to music because on a road, you may want to hear the cars and all that. We never picked up music, but you may want to call people. You may strike up a conversation with the passerby or the cyclist and all those things. But in the entire day, this was probably for about half an hour or 1 hour. But for the rest 7 hours, it's just complete silence and loneliness. Like if you have to step back and see my entire ride, it is almost like it's a ride of silence interspersed with conversations, right? Very few conversations. but that was silence. And after some time, silence can either get boring or it makes you reflect, right? And it was the first time that I was reflecting on a lot of many things. It's not that I started off wanting to discover or reflect, but you ended up reflecting on many things. With my reflecting my relationship with my parents, with my wife, with my colleagues at work, and all of those. And I'll probably share with you towards the end of it. But it was always a lonely ride where you don't see too many. I mean, of course, you'll have buses and cars coming, but it was lonely. So it was a warm change that at every city, you will find cyclists coming and welcoming you. It may be 5, it may be 10, it may be 2, right? Bombay, Nasik, Aurangabad, Raipur, West Bengal, Nagaland, Assam, Guwahati. At every big cities, you have cyclists coming and they'll say, we are coming in this place, please meet us. They'll take you to their chai tapris, their popular chai tapris, eating places. They'll share their journeys with you. They'll understand what you're doing. So those were the welcome reliefs in the silence, right? But it was very nice to get people, and they would have ridden from almost 60-80 kilometers just to meet you and then ride with you for another 80 kilometers, right? This is a guy from Pune, Kishore. And also the kind of thing that I'll just talk about, the kind of help that they did. Yeah, this is somewhere in Guwahati or Assam. This was again Guwahati. This is Raipur, and you make friends, right? What is interesting is you are going in your own world. You will quickly for some time go into their world, understand that, come back, go ahead, go into someone else's world, come back. And here is one world like Arun. Arun rode all the way. He's a forest officer. He rode almost 110 kilometers one way, stayed in the same hotel as with us in the night. He arranged everything for us, and he didn't even know us. He didn't even know our name. He arranged the hotel. He rode back the next day with us. He arranged food for us. And then in the night, he was recounting his forest things, right? He was talking about how he caught poachers, how he'll wait for 1 week in the forest, and the kind of animals that he has sighted, and also his skirmishes with Naxalites. And he'll say, "Ab jo raste mein ja rahe na, wahi raste mein hai." And that kind of psyched us a bit. But he was a very nice human being, and he became a very good friend of ours. And of course, he arranged food and all those kind of things. And here is one more Messiah. And you'll find a lot of people like them on the road where they will stop you. They'll say, "Sir, मैं आगे 20 किलोमीटर में रुका हूँ, थोड़ा आ जाइए." And they will stop. They will take you to their house, give you lemon juice and water, understand what you're doing, and then just let you go. And they won't even ask money. And this was the first broken promise in my mind where we said we'll send him photographs, but we didn't send it to him. And then this guy actually gave us numbers all the way to Burma, saying कि अगर किसी भी problem होगा तो ये सब number call करो. And I remember West Bengal kids running after us, giving bottles of water just for the sake of it and run away. Right? So a lot of things like that. And there she was again giving us juice. So that was Maharashtra, not just Maharashtra, across places we found these things. From Maharashtra, and when I entered Chhattisgarh, I mean, I've never been to Chhattisgarh by road. I've never been to Manipur, Nagaland, right? In my mind, it is all about what I hear in the media, and what you hear in the media is not nice. And for me, when I enter Chhattisgarh, I feel that there are people hiding behind trees just to kidnap us, and that's the truth. Even in Nagaland, I felt the same thing. Manipur, I felt the same thing. But I went into Chhattisgarh. It was very surprising. And when you enter Chhattisgarh, there is a lot of buzz. There are people going about, very busy. Infrastructure works taking place. Roads are fantastic, right? Maybe through the places and mind you that after Maharashtra, to a certain extent, the entire journey of ours was through the hinterlands of Orissa, Chhattisgarh, and all the places, right? We passed through a lot of villages, right? And Chhattisgarh it looked like it was just waking up. If I have to humanize it, if I think about Maharashtra, in my mind, Maharashtra is a very well-settled, slightly middle-aged guy who's comfortable, a bit more seen poverty, but has come out of it, right? And you could see that in the villages. There were bikes and cars parked in many of the places. When you went into Chhattisgarh, it looked like a young guy starting to come up, right? Wanting to do something. That is the sense I had about Chhattisgarh. And it was buzzy. And to the extent that, of course, maybe it is because of Arun, we used to get Twitter and welcoming messages from the government saying, "Hey, thank you, take care," so on and so forth. And that was a kind of thing that we felt in Chhattisgarh. And from Chhattisgarh, when I entered Orissa, it was stillness. And the stillness was not coming from any calmness, but the stillness was coming from the abject poverty, and nothing moved there, right? There was nothing that moved there. I think when you see people, you see them in ragged clothes. The kind of houses were very, very made of bamboo, very, very, it's not even concrete. I'll just share some of those, but it left a very indelible feeling in me. I had mixed reactions when I went to Chhattisgarh because of, Orissa. Place was very beautiful. I think the canopy of forest was just coming to embrace you. And when I saw it, the first thing in my mind was, hey, nothing should happen to this place. I hope that it remains as is, right? It was my greed and selfishness that nothing should happen to it. But if nothing happens, people will be like that, right? And in my mind, the second broken promise was, I felt I should do something for this state, but I've come back and I've done nothing, right? But it was some of the most, and this is actually a dhaba. I never seen a poor dhaba like this. Like, where they're still cooking in firewood. Other dhabas, you at least have not just stoves, but you see bikes and cars and all those things parked. But this was how Orissa was first to us. And again, Orissa was, the roads are all not done at all. It was in shambles. Probably Orissa was one of the worst roads that we ever passed through. This kind of back roads. No infrastructure work. Everything was still. Everything was just standing as is, right? That's some of the house that happened. Sorry, this is just a small weed, some small soundbite of, this was around 4:30 in the morning and I was riding and I could hear a lot of insects and birds and all those things. Just the sound was a cacophony. I could hear it almost half a kilometer away and I was thinking, where was I going? Yeah, this is just to give some noise. And I was passing through. And I realized that it was just coming from one tree. Just one tree was, that entire cacophony was just like that, right? So that was Orissa. And by this time, because our sleep, we were getting sleep deprived for almost 4 hours, 5 hours. We were thinking that we should retire by at least 6:37. At least we should be able to get into the hotel at 6:37. But none of this happened. Because every day we will find something which will delay us. Right, there was a rail and we waited for 1 hour for the train to come, and I just wanted to race the train, right, just to run and see how it feels. So it will either be that, or it will just be an impromptu cricket where some villages are playing. You'll just go and play for 1.5 hours, or just chat up with the children out here, or help the farmers load their stuff. So something or the other used to happen. And this was the only thing that broke the monotony, but at the same time, it took time away. And I remember we were actually getting down a ghat from Orissa, and it was almost 7:30. It was pitch dark. And for the next 15 minutes, and it was dark, right? You can't see anything once you switch off the light. We just switched off all the lights and we just ripped with their cycles. We said, boss, whatever happens. We fall, we break our bones, it's fine. But just let us rip down the ghats in absolute darkness, maybe just the light of your cycle. And we did almost 15 kilometers in sheer terror, but adrenaline flowing, but in sheer darkness. And that was the only thing of Orissa that happened. And then from Orissa, we went to West Bengal. This was the most boring 10 or 12 days ride of our life. We were just gritting our teeth. We were just hoping that this ride just gets complete, and we were on each other's nerves, not because of anything else. The best roads were in West Bengal, apart from Chhattisgarh, but they were just plains, just fields after fields. There is no mountains, there is no trees, nothing. And you're just staring at the same road, same field, and it just gets on to you like nobody's business, right? And you're biting each other's head off. We just wanted to exit West Bengal as quickly as possible. Across all states, the most unruliest of bus drivers were West Bengal. Yeah? They just scream and screech and bully their way through everything. But yeah, so we just want to get out. You used to get good photographs, of course, right? Some good photographs of bridges and all that. But it was the same monotonous ride. The one saving grace is we found this auto guy. And that was one interesting thing I was right from Calcutta all the way to Guwahati. You didn't see diesel autos. You saw electric autos across all places. These are all imported from China. All 12-year-old and 15-year-old were riding it. And they used to charge it. It used to go for 30 kilometers. And you saw the first electric scooters across an entire state, right? And by this time, we have passed a lot of different kinds of roads, muddy roads, dirt, grime. You don't even see roads in some places. But I should tell you that even the worst of the cases, these road bikes took it. They took the beating so well. It was amazing, right? Potholes and pebbled roads, all of those things. There's this thin 25 tires just took it. And of course, we also were riding in many of these populated places too, where people are always coming and waiting. So probably in the entire 6,000 kilometers, our punctures would have been about 3 or 4 times. That's all, right? Just 3 or 4 times we used to put our wheels. Otherwise, that's the end. And once you cross Kaziranga, right? You almost look like you have entered a very, very different, it's almost like you entered a portal and come to a very different place, right? Air is phenomenal. Roads are better, lot of mountains and ghats, and the topography is changing quite a bit. That is one side of the road is, I think, Assam, and the other side is Meghalaya, right? And on the Meghalaya side, you get all your food stuff, including drinks, very cheap. So people from Assam will just cross over this side of the road, buy this and come back, right? So that was an interesting thing. Divider is the border actually, and we are standing on both the sides, right? That's Assam. And what was interesting is that now as we moved to Assam, beyond Kaziranga, for me, of course, I have Assamese friends, I have Manipuri friends, but when I went there, it looks like a completely different world. Yeah, I think cuisine changed, people changed, dresses changed, language changed, everything changed. So when I started off from Maharashtra, I'm a vegetarian, so at least I could have chapati, dal, and roti. By the time I hit West Bengal, I could at least have dal and rice. By the time I hit Assam, I could just eat rice mixed with a sauce because there was no dahi. Dal also was something which I couldn't taste. And the only thing that you were getting was beef and pork, right? And that was an inkling of what it is going to be when I enter Burma or Thailand for that matter. But beautiful tea garden, that is again me and Prashant posing. But I have to tell you that our nights used to get over by 11 o'clock. But Anchal, who was taking all these photographs, and Srijan, who was actually shooting, their day starts then because at 11:30, they will look at all the photographs, pick up the right ones, color correct it, and upload it by 1:30, get up at 4:30 along with us, shoot the entire stuff, and go back to sleep. They'll catch their sleep in the car, right? But that was far more punishing for them. But some of the photographs that you see are amazing, I mean, spectacular photographs that Anchal has taken, right? And the second thing was, and across the ride, I mean, for 45 days, there were probably 4 or 5 days where we almost gave up. Not gave up, we gave up on that day. I remember one was from Raipur, and we had to push that extra 60 kilometers. And after around 30 kilometers, I look back, Prashant is riding very dazed. He's just looking somewhere and he's just pushing the pedal. And by the time he hit 60 kilometers, he just dropped the cycle and he sat. And it took him about 1 hour to recover to even get into the car. The same happened with me in Bengal. I had a splitting headache, but we had to do it because if I don't do it, then it is going to add up on the days. And in my mind, I'm saying, Prashant, stop, mat ja aage, khatam karte hain yaar aaj. But mera muh se nikal nahi pa raha tha because obviously you understand. And after about, when we stopped, I had a blackout moment for almost 2 minutes. And then we had to get back. And then the next day we have to start all over again. And you're worried what is going to happen. But luckily, this was probably 3 or 4 times that this happened, right? And just to tell you that we never had ever stepped out of Bombay, even to ride for more than 1 day, right? We never trained like that. We had never climbed ghats, and we were all doing it for the first time. And in that way, luck was with us. Climate was with us to a certain extent that we were able to do it. And I remember every day after we stopped the ride, we used to weigh ourselves, right? We used to say, what is the weight of us? Because Nikhil had asked us to do that. Then after eating, we will again weigh ourselves. And the next day, early morning, we will weigh ourselves. And the thing was, if the weight dropped, that means we are not eating enough or we are dehydrating. And every day, whenever we used to stop and weigh, we would have lost at least 2 kgs every day. That was the amount of weight we are losing. And I remember when Mihira said you have to have 4,500 calories, right? We have to make up for that loss of weight on a daily basis. And and sometimes I'll be sitting in my room and I'll hear one shit man from coming from the next room. I know that Prashant has put about 1 kg extra weight, or it'll come from my end where I'll say shit and I'll know that I put on extra weight. So these are all, but it was thank God that Mihira and Nikhil were there to tell boss you need to eat so much. Otherwise, no ways we would have lasted without. So we have eaten in some absolutely, I don't know what kind of dhaba, not even one is dhaba is fine, but in the night when you used to have dinner, I didn't know where the food was coming from. The hotels are all decrepit. None of the hotels were booked because it's a small villages. Every day we used to book the hotels, extremely decrepit hotels. At least we have a bed and we used to have a, kind of a hot water to this thing. And all these hotels looks like that, those clandestine trysts and Cupid play. These are some, those are the kind of hotels, and you could see signs of those out there. But we never fell ill on one day. No fever, no stomach ache, no bad stomach, none of those, right? And I think all the thanks goes to the way Mihira, and every day we used to actually write down what we had and send it to Mihira, and Mihira will correct, saying, okay, your protein has fallen down, your carbs have fallen down, have this, have that. So it was good that she was there and was able to help us through all of this, right? And that was Mihira and Nikhil for their weight in gold. Of course, this is Assam, and that is one of our moments where we could spend about 5 minutes looking at the sunset. Otherwise, we never even had that. And then we reached Nagaland. Nagaland to me was apart from Orissa, Nagaland was probably the second most impression that was there in my mind. When you read about Nagaland, it's about 17 different tribal culture coming together, tribes and all of those things. But when you see people, they are extremely westernized, well turned out, talking in English, and you couldn't connect both tribe and this, right? So that was one. But equally, where we were staying, about just 30 kilometers away, I think there is this tribe called Kioniak tribe, right? Till 1969, they were headhunters. They will go attack a neighboring tribe, and the mark of a warrior was that they will cut the head and get it back to their village, and then there will be tattoos on their chest and so on and so forth. So even today, you can go to that village and see the heads preserved, right? So that was you couldn't connect both of this like that, but it was spectacular. You almost look like you've come to a very different land, right? Nagaland, same with Assam. And they have this Hornbill festival. I think all of us, if you have not attended, we should. And when I went to Nagaland, it is one of those things that you feel that you should have done it 10 years back. You should have traveled there. For people who have traveled, you would have seen the Hornbill festival where in the cultural center, all these 17 tribes will come from December 1st to December 18th, and they will showcase their culture to you, their cuisines and their dresses and all of that. So it's an extravagant thing that normally happens, and it is catching tourist interest, but it's a beautiful thing to see. And it's in our place. I mean, we just took photographs. We couldn't see people, and this is how they used to stay. I mean, today in villages, if you go, it's like this, right? Very beautiful place. And again, from Nagaland, even when you went into Nagaland, there was a fear, because till 1 year back, you could see BSF army with their machine gun outposts all over, and you have to take inner line permit for all of this, right? From Nagaland to Manipur, you are going through Mao territory, right? The entire road was Mao. And again, coming from Bombay, not having stepped out to these places, you have the fear that people are going to kidnap you or hiding behind bushes to take over. So we said, we are not going to have breakfast. We are not going to have lunch. We'll do that entire 160 kilometers at one shot and get it over with. But again, you get surprised. People come there, warm people, give you food, give you water. And thinking, boss, what is the connection? I'm thinking, my fear and what was happening on the ground. But by the time we hit Manipur, we had done around 3,500 kilometers. We had ascended almost 30,000 feet up and down, right? Climbed up and down around 30,000 feet. Finished our Indian leg of the journey. This is Manipur. We saw this lake, floating lake. It looked like a sea to me. It is no longer lake. Wherever you see it is a lake. And I wonder, in my mind, lake is where you could see boundaries. I couldn't see boundaries here at all, right? And then we flew down to Burma. My initial impression, again, Burma left a very indelible impact on me. I think when you flew down to Burma, in my mind, if I have to actually think about Burma, it is like, when you are young and when you are asked to draw a house, you used to draw this nice little cottage with a window, with the chimney, with the smoke coming out, with a nice mountain behind, with a river nearby, and a fence around your house and trees. That to me was Burma, right? It was still pristine. It was still so beautiful, and it was still untouched. I mean, all across India, China, Cambodia, Thailand, it was all progress, but it was still untouched. And again, it was mixed memory for me because we went in at a time where it was open to tourists. So we were lucky in that sense that it was that we went in at that time. And it was just about waking up, right? But people were so innocent, people were so open. And you could see monks were being revered, right? So the only thing when we saw kids, right, they were either doing a lot of hard work on the roads, like they were actually laying roads. It's almost like labor. Or in the cities, you will see kids going into monasteries. Like becoming a monk was still very aspirational, right? And they will take that thing and go for bhiksha. We would see all of those things. And so it was very nice to see it. I mean, it's like this mythologist Joseph Campbell says that the pulse of a city or a country can be made by the tallest structure of that place, right? So if the tallest structure in a city is skyscrapers and business buildings, then it is commerce is big there. If the tallest structure is religious, like churches and temples, that it's a very religious kind of a place. If the tallest structure is probably a place of reading like libraries, then it's a very place which is very academically oriented. And the tallest structures in Burma was still Buddha and the stupas and the pagodas, right? And that was the entire tenor of the place. The other beautiful thing that we saw about Burma was the intermix of technology and monastery, right? You have the monks carrying mobile phones, you have the monks still looking at what we are doing with the camera and all of those things. And the stark difference was still, even when we reached Manipur, in the mornings, we would see children slinging a bag on them and going to school, right? Wherever they are. We didn't see it in Burma. They were actually doing a lot of hard work on the road, or probably going to the monastery and becoming monks. Yeah, that was in between. We saw a lot of women working, right? On the roads, petrol pumps, manning toll gates, grocery stores, late in the night, right? That was something that was there. But Burma, if you have to visit Mandalay, probably Bagan. Bagan has got some 10,000 pagodas, beautiful ruins. You go in the morning, you go in the evening. Spectacular photographs is what you can get in Burma, obviously full of pagodas. Tallest. In this place, you also found Ganpati, Vishnu. And there was a lot of Hinduism remnants out here. I'll just go by just this nice photographs that we took. It's going a bit slow. And then we went to the other side of Burma and started cycling back. Roads were, again, and these are very interesting. So typically when you land in Burma, right, not just in Burma, but there is a good cycling culture across Southeast Asia. India is still waking up to the cycling culture, but you take Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Burma, you will find a lot of these Westerners coming in, picking up a continent. They will do Southeast Asia, end in India, then pick up some other continent, and so on and so forth. So when we met these guys out here in Burma, first of all, they were shocked that they are thinking that, how are you getting a support car? You're not supposed to be cycling like this. You're supposed to carry a pannier. You're supposed to put your own load and you have to go. And this is not purist. This is not cycling. So in their mind, they're looking down on us, thinking this is not the way to cycle. And in my mind, I'm thinking this leisurely class people taking 6 months off and roaming here and there. I'm thinking, in log kya kar rahe hai, right? So the same cycling looked at it differently. And we've left India back where people even couldn't fathom what you're doing with cycles, right? So 3 different perspectives on how cycling happens. But we found a lot of these folks who were from Burma onwards, where a lot of cyclists were doing it far, far better. And here we were passing through the burning season, right? Fields getting burned, all of those, and that was adding to the heat. And from Burma onwards, you're only sleeping for 3 hours, and that is us sleeping in the car. And Bagan is very beautiful. I think it's just 10,000 pagodas, absolutely a lot of those remnants that you can see. And you have this hot gas balloon rides that you can do. We couldn't do it because it was $400, but they kind of show the place from above, right? I'm just going through this thing. And this was a very interesting thing. Somebody's told us about this cave, somewhere up in the mountains, where they said that in the evenings, bats come out. And it keeps going on for 1 hour, right? And we said, okay, let us try and find the place. And just playing this small video where we waited for almost 1 hour for the bats to come. And after the bats came, they were just flying on and on and on for almost 1 hour. And it is, you see in those National Geographic where they make patterns, turn those birds, right? Similar to that, it was a very different experience. Right? And there's almost billions of bats just flying on and on and on and on and on. And they'll come back. It's almost like those Batman movies that you watch. And this is the brother, Anchal wanted us to post for this. This is a brother-in-arm moment of mine and Prashant's. So she said, you have to post, and that is us. And I put my daughter through a lot of this. She used to wake up at 4:30 or 3:30, bundle her and put her in the van. And these were her small moments where she felt happy. Otherwise, she was going through one hell, right? And I just wonder. And then she'll come back and draw what she drew, what she saw on that day. So that was her way of getting a stress out. And we are lucky that we are passing through this. So there is this water festival that happens in Southeast Asia. I mean, starting right from Holi in India to Sangkran or something in Thailand, to Cambodia, to Vietnam, all the places they have this water festival, which is almost ushering in the new year. So the water festival is that you are washing off your old sins for that year. You're taking bath and you're emerging as a new person. So water festival was there, which is again something that was really enjoyable. So that was something that we experienced. And interesting thing about the water festival is that unlike Holi here, which we do it with friends, there it is with strangers. You actually travel places to get drenched by unknown, strange people. So the entire road would be of people just waiting to throw water on you, and people will be traveling to get wet. And this is like, I remember Christopher saying when he was in that Camino trip, right? He's saying that the language of Camino need not need a language. It's silence, right? You just meet people, you drink, you have food, but you don't talk for 1 hour. And obviously celebrations is that, right? You don't talk, you don't know the language, you just connect, you just do that and then go back, right? So that was just move on, and we reach Burma. The interesting thing about the border crossing is that in my mind, the crossing of borders were, there were walls and, people can't go through. But here we are showing our passports and all of those things. And from the side, people are crossing from the river and going to the other side. From those side, people are crossing and coming this side. So we don't know, the borders are very porous. So that was the first time I realized that anybody can go anywhere and come anywhere. I think people like us show passports, that's all. So I remember this I think it was, I missed this, in when you were crossing Manipur, we had the border security force, right? And they had arranged for food and water and all those things for us. And we were seeing the nice welcoming thing of BSF. And then on the other side, I saw these two Jawans stop a truck, take bayonets and pitchfork and actually ram it in and disturb the whole haystack and all that. Extremely brutal. So I was asking, boss, kya kar rahe hain log? He said, no, boss, this is the road, the biggest smuggling route of drugs and whatnot, right? People and so on and so forth. So at one side, you see the nice benign part of them, and the other side, you see the worst part of them, right? So I remember one of the broken promises, we were actually cycling in Assam, and one young kid actually cycled with us all the way, and he said, boss, mere ko Thailand aana hi hai. And he actually went and talked to his parents, and his parents agreed for him to come with us to Thailand. And we were scared, yaar, ek bachcho ko kidhar leke jayega? He was around 14 years old, and extremely strong guy. I mean, he was riding really fast. And somehow we managed to tell him, boss, nahi aa sakta hai. But we promised him that we will at least get him to be a good cyclist. Maybe put him onto a cycling group, give him cycles, so on and so forth. But I was going through the photographs. I remember that was again the third promise that we hadn't kept up. Right? I think this reminds me that if I'm able to find the address, I should go and do it. So that was that. Burma was very sorry. Thailand was only for 4 days. So 3,500 kilometers of India, probably around 1,800 kilometers of Burma, and about 800 to 900 kilometers of Thailand. And by the time we finished our ride, we had climbed almost 70,000 feet up and down across Ghats, across all of those places, and around 6,000. This is one day before we hit the Thailand finish. That is Prashant's father and mother who flew down from Bombay. That is Prashant's uncle and aunt who flew down from Canada just to welcome him. And then they went to play golf and so on and so forth. And that's me coming back to my family after 5 months. I used to send photographs to my mom, right? She was on her way to go, hoping that she will know something, but I think that didn't register at that point of time. She didn't register all of these things. But what happened is that finally, in me, I think I felt something had changed. It was not because I started with the feeling, I never started saying that it's an act of discovery or something will change or reflect. But when I finished the ride, I at least felt that a couple of things had changed in me. One was that my relationship with my father, I think that changed drastically. I think otherwise it was like Amitabh Bachchan and Dilip Kumar in Shakti, right? Always fighting or always getting at each other's throat, and my mom coming in between us and so on and so forth. But my relationship with my father changed very, very differently. Maybe it's because of my mother's death. I don't know what all, but I felt after this, it was a huge change for me. The second thing I felt was that I had become far more honest with myself. I don't know, directly, indirectly, with clients, with colleagues, with my family, with everybody, and with myself, importantly, I had become far more honest. I think these are the two changes that I felt in me as a person. And maybe I started listening more, probably. Not sure, but that was the third one. What I'll do is I'll finish this with a video of Prashant. Prashant that shot this along with Srijan. And this is his feeling of the ride. This is his take of the ride. So I'll just leave it with that.
Dear son, today is day 45. Our hardest so far. It's 42 degrees in the sun and climbs that never seem to end. Every day is a new lesson for me. I have learned more in these few weeks than I have in an entire lifetime. So today, I pass on these lessons to you. Love something so deeply you can think of nothing else. Let your dreams keep you up at nights. Laugh. Find someone to laugh with, or you may find an excuse to take yourself too seriously. Travel. Leave this city before it makes you jaded. Chase after things that make sense only to you. Do not let your fears discourage you. If you're scared half to death, you're doing something right. Breathe. Enjoy your journey. The real joy is not in being done with it, but in doing it. It's here. It's now. Son, you are not born yet, but very soon you will be. and I will be here with you every step of the way. But if for any reason I'm gone, I leave you with these letters. They will help you understand the choices I made, the lessons I learned. For now, you must make your own. Love, Dad.
This kind of experiences touch you, change you, displace you, obviously does something to you, maybe subtly, maybe very obviously. Now, if you like to hear this kind of experiences, this kind of stories, like us, follow us.